the purpose of life that I have been chasing from early years. I feel I have achieved a little bit of it or quite a bit of it, and I'm a happy man.
Welcome to the PM Podcast, brought to you by DonorSearch, the show that takes you inside the lives of thought leaders, innovators, and changemakers in fundraising, philanthropy, and civil society. I'm your host, Jay Frost. Dr. Abraham George is the founder of Shanti Bhavan and the George Foundation, dedicated to transforming the lives of India's most disadvantaged children. A former captain in the Indian Army, he moved to the United States, earned an MBA and Ph.D. at NYU, and built a successful career in international finance before turning to philanthropy. His work at Shanti Bhavan, featured in the Netflix series Daughters of Destiny, continues to break barriers of poverty and caste, offering a new future to generations of children. In this conversation, we explore his journey from Kerala to global leadership in social change. I'm interested to know about your own beginnings. Can you tell me a bit about where you're from and what that was like? You know, your community and your family.
All right. I was born in southern India in a town called Trivandrum, which is at the very tip of India, the bottom. It is surrounded by three oceans, actually, Indian Ocean, Bay of Bengal, and the Arabian Sea. So I had my early childhood there. I went to school. And then I joined the military as, training for becoming an officer. And India has one elite school called the National Defense Academy, which was an offshoot of Sandhurst in England after the British rule. So I went through training from the age of 14 to 17 there. And then another 1 year in a place called Dehradun, which is in the northeast side, where I specialized in the army, training for becoming an army officer, and then another 6 months to be an artillery officer. So you go through 4.5, 5 years of training before you become an officer in the Indian military.
And that's very early to start when you think about it, 14. But what were your dreams maybe earlier as a boy, before this life of the military?
Right. It was not something that I would have planned. I happened to see the military parading in front of my grandfather's house. There was a parade ground, and I thought it was exciting to see them marching, so synchronized, and the salutes and everything else. And I got excited, and I told my parents, I like to join the military. That's what happened. Nothing else. No other motivation.
And so you again went off to school. Was this a choice? How do you make that choice? Was that your parents saying, "We want you to go off to this place that's so well known for the military, it's just like Sandhurst," or was this a choice that you were drawn to?
Indian parents tend to send their children, or would like their children to go to engineering or medical profession, because that's where they can make a living. India in the 1960s, when I was growing up, 50s and 60s, it was very, very poor. The famine was all over India, and it had just gained independence in 1947. So a lot of things were very much in turmoil. And being a military officer was considered very prestigious, especially going to this academy that I was talking about. So my parents, seeing that I was a fairly smart guy, a young guy, they thought, okay, let him go. And that's how I ended up there.
Now, I know that one of the things about the military, at least in the United States, and I'm sure it's different from India and every other country, it has its own unique characteristics. But my father was also field artillery.
Okay.
But I remember my family talking about how the differences between people's backgrounds when they enter the military and then were together became more visible to them. My mother was from Oklahoma. That was the life she knew on the Army base. My father was from a small farm in Michigan. That was the life he knew, that community. And then when you got together with others, it was a different way of seeing the world. Was that true for you as well?
Yes, very much so. I was from the southernmost part of India, and most of the south was insulated from invasions from the north. The Persians, the Alexander the Great, and so many rulers invaded northern India, and even the Persians, and converted a lot of Hindus into Islam. But south was not touched. So for someone from the south wanting to join the military was not very commonplace. And we were not that much well respected because we are not supposed to be warriors. The northern fellows were the ones who fought wars.
Oh,
But the officers' training is somewhat different, and there, if you do well, you get finally recognized. And I was pretty much wanting to to get into artillery because I hated walking too much in the infantry. I didn't want to be locked up in a tank, so my choice was the artillery. So we could ride around on a jeep. So that's how I ended up, and you have to do very well to get your own choice for the which arm that you will be selected for.
I can't imagine what it must have been like to be that young and then bunking, I don't know if you describe it that way, with people from all over a vast country with very different cultures embedded within the military.
Exactly, yes.
Including many different languages. So you've got a lot of different things happening there. And then you don't just stay there. So you were deployed, I know, fairly soon after that, to a very complicated region because of the time. So for people who don't know that history, could you share a little bit about what that was like in your early deployment?
Right. In 1962, the Chinese invaded India, and India was in some ways defeated in that war. It was unexpected. They attacked in the northeast and in the west, in the Himalayan region. But for whatever reason, maybe the Chinese couldn't maintain their logistical requirements for holding the land. They withdrew, and the Indian military advanced. And I had just got commissioned as an officer, and when the war ended, and India was trying to establish defensive positions along the border. And I was sent to an altitude of 14,000 feet above sea level. It was they call it the highest battleground anywhere in the world at that time.
And you were from sea level.
Yes.
Where you grew up. So, right.
I am at sea level. That's right. And I went off there, -degree temperatures and, shortage of oxygen, all of those things. And I was barely 18. And I was sent up to the hills, this place called Sela, which is a valley through which the Chinese had invaded in the northeast. I was sent up there to establish gun positions in case the Chinese again attack. Imagine an 18-year-old going with 300-400 soldiers trying to dig into the Himalayas and put the guns up there. Well, I was a pretty determined guy, and I did that. But unfortunately, in the 11th month of my deployment there, in an accident, I was blown up. A dynamite accident where, we were blowing up the rocks with detonators and fuse wires, and the fuse wires were running short, and I cut the length of the fuse wires, finally came down to 2 inches, and there was only 5-10 seconds to light and then turn around and jump. And I didn't want to give that job to the soldiers because it wouldn't be, safe. If they got killed, it would be bad. So as an officer, I was the only officer there in that area. And I took on that job, and I didn't detect when it got lit. But last second, I did notice I turned around, but it was just a little too late. I was sort of thrown away. And I was carried to the hospital where they had to remove a lot of rock pieces from my body and things like that. And that was also a turning point in my life because there was absolutely no reason why I should have been saved. If I was a fraction of a second late, I would have been killed. And so I had time to reflect. There must be a good reason why I survived. And that is the beginning of my story.
Well, and that's a really short version of something that must have been quite a period of recovery and reflection. So the first thought that occurs to me is at 14,000 feet, it's not as if there's a hospital in every corner. Where did they take
No,
you?
it
And
had to be brought down. Had to be brought down to 8,000 feet. There was a field hospital there.
right. And then how long was your recovery?
I was in the hospital for 3, 4 days only. Then I was sent home for a month or so to recover. Um, and then when I was getting well, I was posted to the other side where the Pakistan border. India had a couple of wars with Pakistan, and
Right.
I was sent to the border, and by then I had gained a reputation for being somewhat of a daredevil or something. And I got a couple of promotions, and in 2 years I became became a captain and adjutant of a regiment, which was very unusual. The youngest captain in the Indian military at that time. So I had some good days, and but my story is somewhat different, and that is that all along, from that day I was blown up to the time I left the army 3 years later, it took me some time to get out. I was thinking about the idea of social service. I didn't think that military was my calling. I happened to read a couple of books, one by Albert Schweitzer, who won the Nobel Prize, and he traveled all the way to Equatorial Africa, and in Gabon he established a hospital, a small clinic, which is now a big hospital, living among the animals and everything else. I thought it was such an exciting life to be there. And again, I wanted to do something like that. I was barely 20 at that time. No, I was 18 at that time. Then I read another book, and that was about, I think it's called History of the Western Civilization by, oh my God, I missed his name. He'll come back to me. One of the lines in that book is, there is nothing right about war. It is about who is left. So it caught my interest, right and left, and I understood that I couldn't be spending the rest of my life training to kill others. This was not something I wanted to do. I know it's a noble profession. You have to defend your country against invasions, but I just didn't want to do the killing part. So I decided that I'll leave, and 3 years later, I got out.
It sounds like the books had a big impact on you, but that doesn't usually happen unless it's sort of like planting seeds, unless the ground itself is fertile. So I'm wondering, in philanthropy, which is something we'll discuss, and it's been a big part of your life since, often people will talk about early experiences, either with family or something like that, where they saw philanthropy in practice, or in this case, where you're talking about these books, where they saw some kind of social good at work, maybe as children. Do you remember any of that being a factor, so that when you then read these books and had these experiences, you thought, oh, I can see myself in that story?
Yes, as an incident happened when in the church that we used to attend, there was a lot of infighting and two fractions within the church, and one of them broke away and wanted to establish their own church. And so the bishop, along with a couple of priests, turned up at my parents' home and asked for some money to build a new church. My father said, no, I don't like you fighting. I'm not going to fund it. So then the bishop said, uh, God will punish you. At that, my father got very annoyed. He said, who are you to speak for God? You take your robes off and go and work among the poor. And I was standing there, I was listening to this conversation, and I was fairly young. And it had a huge impact on me. I understood that my father, though he was going to church and the bishop being the most important figure, he was not willing to listen to these kinds of things, and service was very important to him. Though I must admit, my parents didn't have the kind of money to help any social causes at that time, but they were always talking to me about doing service.
So that word, that concept was there, and then of course you made it your own when you had this moment of change. So you left the military, and then I know you embarked on a business career. But how did that start? Because you went to the United States. So, well, why that journey?
Okay, that's another part of the story. That's the second part of my life. I was, those days it was easier to get a visa to come to America for studies, not like today.
What year was that you came over first?
I'm sorry?
What year was it that you went to the US?
1968. 1968. And luckily, my mother was in Huntsville, Alabama. She was working for the NASA space agency. Just that she's no more. She would have been 105 today. She's the second woman in India who got a PhD in physics.
Oh, wow.
Second woman. And she was taken in by National Bureau of Standards in Washington, D.C. to do research there. And then NASA, remember, that was the Kennedy days,
Yes.
And so she was working there, and she sponsored me so I could come. And I lived for 1 year in Alabama, Talladega, Alabama.
In 1968,
Have you heard of that place,
was
Talladega?
Wow. That's what was it like then?
Oh, Talladega is, built a race course,
Oh,
Talladega
sure.
500, and
Right.
it's a small little place. And I went to University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa and Birmingham. And I attended part-time in a Southern Baptist school called Samford University. Someone coming from India in the first year, you end up in University of Alabama and Samford University. It's an experience by itself. And that was the time when George Wallace, the governor of Alabama, was standing in front of the University of Alabama and blocking black students from entering. I don't know whether you know that history.
Is that the year that he said segregation now, segregation forever?
Yeah, something like that at that time, before he was shot,
Yes.
way before he was shot. So I was there in the midst of it. And I tell you, that was one good experience I had. I learned firsthand what segregation was because I never felt it. I had never been a victim of racial prejudice. And secondly, I understood how religion and race and discrimination all sort of combined. Southern Baptist School and everything else. So it was a good education for me. After a year and 3 months, I went off to New York. Never came back.
So I have to ask you one thing before we move on, and that is that I know you spent a lot of your the later stages of your career working on things related to caste, which is something I hope we will discuss today.
Sure.
But you didn't reference it already in your life at home. when you were growing up or in the military, and it must have been present. And it certainly was present in Alabama. What was your awareness of that early on, and then as you started to make this professional journey in the U.S.?
Good question. While you are in India, you hear about discrimination of the blacks. And we understood that as a discrimination based on color, mostly color, and facial features and things like that, African descent. While in India, the caste system goes back to thousands of years, at least 1,500 years, where the society got created based on the responsibilities given to different segments of people. There was a priestly class who were to worship and conduct, the prayers in temples. They are the highest. Then comes the warriors who are supposed to fight. Then comes the merchants who do all the trade. And then finally, the people who do menial labor. But then suddenly they found that they needed people to clean up the latrines. There was no, modern sewage, anything. It's all outside. Clean up, dirty things, take the carcass of, dead animals and things like that. And you need it. So they created what they call a casteless part of the society. And they were called the untouchables. They were not allowed to even enter your house, touch anything. You have to stand 100 feet away from, upper caste people and bend down almost to the floor and say, I am here, untouchable is here. That's how you greet the master. That's the state of affairs. I didn't see that because by the time I grew up, that custom had changed. But I could see where they were living. And the lowest caste, the fourth category, as I said, they were also very badly treated. And my grandfather, who happened to be a landlord, so he sort of fell into the upper caste, even though he's not a Brahmin as a priest, but he was still a moneyed man, and he didn't treat anyone bad, but he wouldn't allow them to come inside the house and so on. So I had observed all this, and when I was in the military, I was traveling all over India. And during those trips, I've been to villages and other places, and I saw rampant the discrimination. The North was worse than the South, even today. So I was fully aware that these people were treated extremely poorly. And when I came to America, and I wanted to do social service, the most powerful force that was impacting me was the injustice of the caste system. And I was thinking about how to create an impact on somehow breaking the caste. In a small way. It's such a big country, I can't do anything much. And during my doctoral work, PhD in NYU, I took up economic development as one of the areas and finance as another. And I was always asking and discussing with my professors, what is the best way to do this thing when I go back one day? And I came to the conclusion in my discussion, and my professors obviously had a role in it. They said the best way is from the bottom up, not from the top. Don't wait for the government to break the caste system. Don't wait for handouts to the poor. Don't wait for quotas to the poor people. In America also we have the quota system. Don't wait for that. You have to bring up from the bottom. And the secret to that is take children from the poorest of the poor. Offer them the same opportunity of an excellent education and upbringing that the rich would have. And they should succeed. And they will multiply their effect by their siblings and through others. And if you do it with large enough numbers, then the caste system will automatically break, because these young people who have been well trained they will go on to work in large companies. They will travel around the world. And so when I came to India back from after 25 years of career in business in New York, actually, and I was speaking about this idea to people in India. I was trying to create a board, and the board of directors that I was forming were very, very prominent people. Admiral of the Indian Navy, the CEO, chairman of the largest insurance company, and so on. And none of them believed that children from poor families can succeed. They said there is something intrinsic that they do not have that ability. And I refused to accept that. I said, if you bring them up well, correctly, and give the best education, they too will succeed. Well, I had no proof other than saying that. And I knew I had to wait a long time to see the result. But the result is already out after another 18, 20 years. The children who are graduated from Shanti Bhavan, the school I established, and we support them through college too. Some of them go on to masters, some of them go on to even doctoral programs. We have one girl in clinical psychology in New York doing a PhD. And so I proved the first point that they can do just as well as anyone else. And most of our graduates are working in multinational companies, Microsoft, Cisco, ExxonMobil, name anything. In fact, these companies want our kids. In recruitment process, they love the kids because the way we bring them up with social skills and humility and many other values, they came from the poorest society and they don't have to be arrogant. And that appeals to people. Especially American companies which are operating there, and they would like to have, an opportunity given to children from these types of homes. And don't mistake me, our kids get 95 percentile in SAT, 95 to 99 percentile. And so they are in Princeton, they are in Stanford, Duke, Middlebury, Dartmouth, University of Chicago. That's where they got admission. So it is possible. Children from the poorest of the society can achieve great success if you bring them up well and offer them the opportunity to succeed.
I do want to ask you more about that, in particular in reference to what we were talking about before with caste, because part of this is about poverty, and you've worked a lot on that issue. But also part of it is other forms of discrimination that you were encountering, frankly, among your board members. So,
right.
So I have several questions, but let me just start with a simple one, which is, how did you get your board to come around to your way of thinking? Or did you?
They're nice people. They're nice of course. People, but it is just that they are set in their ways to think like that. Mm-hmm. But they said at the end, it's your money. You do the way you want. We will help you.
Did they eventually start to see it?
We don't agree with you, but you do your way. So I didn't convince anyone.
But I guess the proof is in what happened. So the next generation of board members have the evidence. There's nothing to prove.
Nobody questions today. No one questions today.
Now, but going back a little bit, so for those who don't know, you obviously went through school, you went onto Wall Street, I guess. Then you were, I think, was it Sun Microsystems? So you had a whole bunch of different business practices that enabled you to then found the George Foundation, and eventually, of course, the organization that we're talking about, Shanti Bhavan. So as you just said right there with the board, it's your money, you can do what you want. What was it like to have to wait? You were a person who already had the vision, it sounds like, much earlier, but you were also, you had to work and make a living, but I guess earn the resources in order to undertake this social action. What was it like to have to wait?
Well, I didn't work for the last 30 years. I never earned anything in the last 30 years. I was living off the money I earned in my business career. After working for 2, 3 years in JP Morgan and things like that, I started my own company. That grew from the basement to several countries. We became a market leader in the field of international financial systems. I was also working for Credit Suisse as a managing director in one of the divisions, one of the departments we formed. So I had a couple of jobs and I had made a reasonable amount of money, not in today's terms. Today, everybody makes in billions, I suppose.
Some do.
But anyway, I decided that I cannot wait any longer. I was in my late 40s, and I had made a promise to myself that I will move on to social service. So I did cold turkey. I sold everything I got. Everything. I sold my company. I sold 20, 30 consulting assignments I had, and came to India.
What did the people
returned to
around
India.
you? What did the people around you say when you did this?
A lot of them said I'm crazy. I'm not very sensible. But my family didn't really. My mother didn't object. My mother was a matriarch of the family, and she had a commanding role in the household. And she said, "If that's what you want to do, do it." And so I came, and for the first 13, 14 years, I didn't bother to ask anyone for money. I started building things and doing things until 2007 came about, 2007, 8. My investments in real estate and stocks all took a nosedive, huge nosedive. And I wiped out, I would say, 50, 60% of my wealth. And so here I was spending so much money in India, and I had to maintain my household in the United States. And my wife had a job as a CPA. And so she said she will take care of the US expenses. You go and do your stuff. And would you believe, 25 years we lived separately. I would come for 2 months every year. She would come for 1 month every year to India. That's how we did this part of the work. And only in the last 5, 6 years, she has been together with me after retirement. But anyway, that's her part of the story. Maybe one day she'll speak to you. But, I felt that I needed to get started. That was 30 years ago. And ever since, I have not looked back. I lost money, huge amount. So my son, I have 2 boys, the elder son, Ajit, he joined the foundation to raise money, fundraising. And he has been very, very successful only because he is convinced that this is the right thing to do in life. And he abandoned everything else he was doing. And for the last, say, 18 years, he has been working full-time, raising money in the United States. By the way, US is where most of our donations come from, some from Europe, and a small portion from India. Between all of that, we recovered. Today, we are better off than ever before, even before I started fundraising. And we have established a second Shanti Bhavan and doubling our size. And my hope is that before my time is over, we'll have a third Shanti Bhavan, and others take it up, the idea, and they do their own thing. I honestly believe the caste system can be broken through these children.
And are you, in terms of the recruitment of the children to Shanti Bhavan, to the now 2 and soon 3 schools,
Yes.
How are you identifying these children? How are you bringing them in? Because there's pressure within the community for them to, I'm sure, to stay, to marry, especially for the girls, to marry at a very young age. So how do you convince the community to let them come in? How do you find them in the first place and then welcome them in?
That's a very good question. Initially, I didn't know exactly what to do. We went around villages and said there is a school we are opening, which is only for the poorest of the poor. You must be earning less than $2 a day for the family. That was the criteria. Not based on caste or anything like that. And we found that a great majority of them were single mothers. The husbands have left and gone off somewhere. And many of them had 4 or 5 kids, and they couldn't support. And they said, okay, we'll give you one. And we were asking for age of 4. We were not there to take them in terms of, separating them, but they have to live with us. I realized that I cannot change their mindset and everything unless I have the ability to groom them in our school. If they go back to the same values by which they live in the villages, lying, cheating, stealing, setting the woman on fire, sexual abuse. The child is seeing sexual activity at home because they are living in one small crammed up room, and husband, wife, or man and woman, they're all there. So it is not possible to change them. And drinking is rampant. It's something they do all the time, whether they have money or not. So I had to take them into the school at the age of 4. And they can visit the child every 3 months. It's every 6 months they go home for a month vacation. And at the end of the year, they go for 2 months vacation. So 3 months they are home, and that's all that possible. And this model has worked immensely well. I am able to groom the children to be suited for the today's society, the broader, the society in which they will grow up, to be working for multinational companies and so on. They have to be having values that are universally, globally shared values of truth, being honest and transparency, and everything we talk about. So I am able to do that, for which I have to be here 24 hours a day. And that's the secret. And the second part of the secret is you have to love them just as your own. If you do those 2 things, you can groom them.
Now, as the kids go through and they start young, I guess, like with any school, a K through 12 kind of environment, correct? So
as they go to college, yeah.
As they go through and then they go off to college, and then whether it's in, like, as you say, Princeton or IIT or whatever it is, they have agency. They have their own independence in life.
Right.
But now you're starting to see them as adults. Are you seeing them also in the same way that you and your son have internalized these values and are practicing them in your own individual ways? Are some of the graduates doing the same thing for the places where they came from?
I noticed that in college, they are still under our supervision, They cannot violate the basic principles that we have set. But there will be romances and, a few things like that, which we have to accept. They are grown up in their 20s. So apart from that, and obviously they can't get themselves into trouble, in those relationships. And they have to perform, they have to do well. If they don't do well enough, we won't support them. So they are under some pressure. They are staying in hostels that we arrange for them, and they have to follow the rules of the hostels. So those things we make sure. But once they finish that and we help them get the first job, after that, we have no role to play.
Right.
Your life.
Of course.
You have to make your life. Mm-hmm. And what I notice is that Yeah, they may make some mistakes, but they haven't abandoned the values by which we have brought them up.
And so
They tell us
are they
constantly.
also interested in investing in the places where they came from, or do they tend to just go off
Yes,
on
they
their own?
do. They do. But we tell them in the initial 5, 6 years, don't even think about helping Shanti Bhavan or helping someone outside your family. You put your parents in a decent home, buy them clothing, put them on medical insurance, pay off the debt, get your sisters married, pay the dowry, all the stuff they have to do it and then save some money for their graduate studies or having their own motorbike or having their own little house. So they are struggling with all these pressures on them. So after that, and by then you have risen up the ladder, then you have the ability to reach out and help someone else. And I wouldn't say dictate, but I would say we would constantly tell them that you have a moral obligation to help others just the same way as you have been helped by strangers have given you money to run the school. Forget about me, others who have come, in recent years. So you have that obligation. So you have to go beyond your own so-called blood relations. And we talk about that. I said, you are not marrying someone who is blood related. You're marrying somebody else. So don't talk about blood and all that. And we tell them, in your lifetime, you have whatever number of years you have, you must help 100 others the same way as you have been helped. And if you do that, the multiplicative effect of all our children doing that, and they in turn helping others, will be so significant that since these kids have broken the caste barriers for themselves, nobody knows which caste they come. They live fairly well, and I feel that in 50 years or more, the caste system would be completely put behind. It has not happened in 1,500 years. It hasn't happened with government dishing out money. Nothing has worked. And education, proper upbringing, and opportunity, these are the key words that I believe in will break this caste system.
Now, you just said a moment ago that you're doing this 24 hours a day. Do you have a whole team? I'm sure you have a whole team you've assembled to assist you in this, both at the schools, but also just with the organization itself. Where is this moving now as you look forward? What do you imagine this looks like 10 years from now, 20 years from now? Shanti Bhavan.
Right now, we have some 120, 120, 130 staff members. The challenge is that is my biggest job. Children are not very difficult. You can bring them up, you can guide them, and you love them, they love you, and you can go on. Staff is a different story. You have to get them to embrace the values by which this institution was built. You have to make them understand that this is their moral duty too. Whatever number of years you work here, you should leave knowing that you have done something to humanity, for humanity. So I spent a lot of time talking to the staff, being someone they can look up to, those type of things. And it's a family that I've created. It's not an institution that I've created. And the affection, the care between each other is what makes this organization run. And now I've spent 30 years. I don't know how many more years I have where, so I have already started a couple of years ago a transition program. I have put my son, who has been 18 years, Ajit, to take over from me. He's already a long way into it. Everybody accepts him because he's got the drive for it. He really believes in all of this. He was born in America. He's an American. But he understands that his dad has done something that he should carry forward. And So that part is fine, but he needs a whole bunch of people to help him. Having been born in America and grown early years there, he is not culturally sufficiently tuned in. And now he's become much better. I had the benefit of having been born in India, so I knew what it is like. But he is learning very, very fast. And he has won the admiration and support of all the others. The trick is I have to find enough good people, well-meaning people. And I'm looking at staff, their children, who had exposure to what we are doing, younger staff members who want to stay around. They are the ones who will have to join my son, and then after my son's time, someone else outside the family will take over and go forward. The transition I'm looking at planning for the next 100 years.
This sounds like too easy of a question, but I mean it sincerely. What gives you the greatest pride in this work?
The greatest pride obviously comes from the fact that the children are blossoming. Children are doing well. They are breaking the society's, discrimination and evil practices. They are able to live a good life. And the second part is they're lovely children. The amount of affection I get, I can't describe to you. When I see them, even those who are in college or working, the love with which they come to me. They see me as their dad. Because I differentiate. I said, don't think of me as a father. Father's your biological. I am your dad only. And so that's using this difference. I am very fortunate. I have the love of hundreds of them. And so in that sense, the greatest joy comes from that. There is nothing else that can replace that. Money is important for doing what we are doing, and we need a lot more money. But the purpose of life that I have been chasing from early years, I feel I have achieved a little bit of it or quite a bit of it. And I'm a happy man because of that. It doesn't mean that I don't have troubles. I have always some trouble or the other. And I don't want to get into all the troubles, but they are, bureaucracy, the government intervention, a whole bunch of stuff, people trying to get money out of you. You have to fight all these things. But that's part of, the business that you do. You can't be upset with that. And you hire the right lawyers, you hire the right accountant, you get it done. But I spend 95% of my time in making sure the staff is focused, the children are happy. You can tell by just looking at them whether they're happy children or not. If I know that they are happy and they're doing well, and I'm always looking at their performance, and if they are not doing well, I put them on special coaching. There are some children, 5% of the population, who have learning difficulties. We try to overcome them, and it could be, retention problem. It could be unable to understand concepts. It could be attention disorder. It could be anger. All the psychological problems that we talk about. But we are in a remote village. The psychologists don't want to come here and work amongst us. And we have learned in these 30 years that there are three aspects to it. One is, of course, psychiatry, the medicine. Second is counseling. And third is environment. I am relying on environment as a way to overcome all these problems. And environment means giving attention, love, hand-holding. And I find that it has helped me improve, I would say, more than 50% of that small population that is having difficulty. Occasionally, I have to take them to the psychiatrist for some medication. Occasionally, I have to have some psychological counseling for the kid. But for most part, it is the environment that we have created that helps the child recover or improve.
Well, that's it for this episode of the PM Podcast. You can learn more about Shanti Bhavan at shantibhavanchildren.org. Our thanks to our sponsor, DonorSearch, the global leader in AI-powered fundraising intelligence solutions for the nonprofit sector. Our producer is Jack Frost, and our theme music is Moving Out, Moving In by Jay Taylor, and is provided courtesy of Epidemic Sound. If you like what you heard, make sure to subscribe wherever you like to listen. Check out our sister shows, Front Lines of Social Good and How to Raise, and come back next weekend for another conversation with a leader in the world of social good. Until then, this is Jay Frost. Thanks for joining me.